Hello, thank you for joining us on this special election night web show. I'm Stephanie Berugian.
I'm Evan Onstadt. Thanks so much for joining us on YourCentralValley.com as well as Facebook Live. If you're joining us on Facebook, by all means, let us know where you're watching from. Feel free to comment and just keep that discussion going. We do appreciate that.
We'd love it. KSEE24, your local election headquarters. We have coverage from throughout the state tonight. We're bringing you all the election results for the 2018 midterms. Our reporters are stationed around the valley, around the state, and we'll be hearing from them live. Look at all of them.
Look at them all.
Wow, that's a big
And that's not all of
list.
them either.
No, it's not. We'll be checking in with them throughout the hour with details on tonight's results.
So let's take a look right now at the race for governor.
Our Ashley Zavala will join us now live in San Diego. She's joining us from the John Cox party. Here are the numbers. Of course, NBC declared Gavin Newsom the winner.
Ashley? Well, we saw her for a second and then we just lost the feed. It's all right. We'll try to get her back up, and if we do. All right, we're hearing from Gavin Newsom right now. He's speaking. John Cox was speaking earlier, conceding. Let's listen to the governor-elect.
For a change. And now I can stand before you knowing I will have the incredible privilege of serving as your next governor. But this victory is really your victory.
Well then.
What is it? What's the deal?
Is it us?
I don't know.
Did we say something? All right. Do we have Ashley Zavala?
I think we
then?
have Ashley Zavala. She's with the John Cox campaign. Here she is. Ashley.
Hi, Stephanie and Evan. Let's try this again. So John Cox was the first candidate here at the Republican Watch Party to concede to his opponent. He says he called the lieutenant governor and offered his help because he said, quote, he's going to need it. He says the election raised awareness about the lack of affordability in the state. He found that important and raised awareness about the high cost of housing and the high cost of gas in California. He told his supporters Republicans will be back in California.
Campaign based upon issues and not personal attacks. I tell you what, I lament the loss of civility that we have had and we have seen in politics. And if I have anything to say about it, we're going to bring honor and civility back into our politics.
Cox right now is making his rounds throughout this building, thanking his supporters. In a little bit in this very building, the Prop 6 campaign, the gas tax repeal effort, is standing by watching those results. We're expected to hear from members of those campaigns here in a few minutes, so we'll stand by for that. For now, reporting live in San Diego, Ashley Zavala, KSEE24, local news that matters.
Ashley Zavala, thanks so much. We appreciate that. All right, we were hearing from Gavin Newsom. It got cut off. Let's try to go back to the governor-elect.
Value we work for, it's the values we fight for. This is a state where, we don't criminalize diversity, we celebrate diversity. We don't reject, we protect the most vulnerable. We don't put profit and loss ahead of clean air. We don't put profit and loss ahead of clean water and clean coastlines. We don't regulate a woman's body more than we regulate assault weapons on our streets. We don't demean, we don't discriminate, and we don't demoralize. We don't separate families, and we don't lock kids in cages. At our best, we always stand up, we step in, and we fight for what's right. See, there's a reason why California's dream is America's leading brand. Because California's dream has always been and always will be too big to fail and too powerful to bully. And here's the thing. The California dream, it's not binary. Every day we show how human endeavor can be both lucrative and inclusive. They aren't mutually exclusive. We don't just want success in the right hands, we want it in everybody's hands. But let's be honest, there's no doubt about this, the dream is still too distant for too many. We're a land of plenty, but we are far from perfect. Too many Californians are being priced out of housing, of health care, and higher education. Too many workers are feeling the ever-tightening squeeze of automation and wage stagnation. Too many children are growing up in poverty and starting school from behind. In many ways, in many places, we are simultaneously the richest and the poorest state. But after traveling California from region to region in a bus fueled by perpetual optimism, I'm more convinced than ever there's no problem in California that isn't somehow, somewhere being solved by a Californian. That's what Californians do, right? We're the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. Californians by birth, Californians by choice, every generation overcoming every conceivable border and bias, all part of the same journey to ascend and succeed together. Over our own journey in the course of this campaign, I've seen it in the hopeful faces of many. I've heard it in their indelible personal stories. I've seen it in the donut store owner in Garden Grove beaming with pride because his daughter was the first in their family to attend college. I've seen it in Miss Jackie, the union home care worker in Lancaster, who dedicates her life to helping other human beings live their final days in dignity. I've seen it in Greg, an heroic homeless veteran just a few weeks back, after years and years of struggle with addiction, has found a new path thanks to treatment and job training. And I've seen it in the bravery of Elizabeth, an 8-year-old girl in Fresno.
All right, that was Governor-elect Gavin Newsom addressing his supporters tonight. We're going to head now to Hanford, where Congressman Devin Nunes is speaking to his supporters at his get-together. And, of course, the numbers are looking very much in his favor tonight. So let's listen in to Congressman Devin Nunes.
Hi, Steph and Evan. Congressman Devin Nunes just took the stage. He wrapped up right before you came out to us live. But let me tell you a little bit about what he was speaking. He is ahead in the polls right now. He did kind of look at the national picture as he was talking, saying the Senate seats that have turned over and become Republican seats now. He said that was a huge win, even though the House of Representatives, he says, now belongs to the Democrats. He did go on to criticize the Democrats for not laying out plans, even though they have these seats now. What are they going to do with it is basically what he was saying. He also said that Democrats will continue to resist, obstruct, and that protests don't do anything for America or for the Valley. He thanked his campaign managers. He thanked his family for their support and everyone here tonight. And we will hopefully be hearing more from him later on this evening. We'll try to find him in the crowd. In the meantime, we have with us a young man. His name is Marcus. We got to chatting. He's supporting Devin Nunes. Marcus, what made you want to support the congressman?
So Devin Nunes helps promote good things for the Valley. He helps promote things like, keeping farmers, producing and helping us be the main producer of goods and all around the globe.
No. And you said you are a college Republican at College of the Sequoias.
Yep.
You're 18 years old, but you grew up in a Democratic household. What made you decide to become a Republican?
So I had a friend back in high school who was really right-leaning, and so I went out to lunch one day with him, and, I was still left-leaning, being from the household, but when I went to lunch with him, he showed me like a side of politics that wasn't just communicate what you feel, but communicate what's right. Communicate what's going to be country over yourself is what I like to say.
Was it kind of cool to see Congressman Nunes? Here's someone you have his button on, and you got to see him speak right now.
Yeah, and Nunes is someone I feel I can look up to, and keep America, good. And
Marcus, thank you so much for chatting with us. You were great. We appreciate it. And Steph, Evan, back to you. We'll be following this race.
All right, Megan, thank you so much.
All right, so the results coming in tonight. We're watching pivotal races that is deciding who controls Congress. Obviously, many of those races, not just here in California, but elsewhere.
Yeah, throughout the country, and dozens of governor seats across the country up for grabs tonight. NBC's Blaine Alexander has a look at the results on the record-breaking midterm election night.
In the first upset of a dramatic election night, Virginia Democrat Jennifer Wexton declaring victory over Republican Congresswoman Barbara Comstock.
Let's celebrate. Thank you.
The first sign of a blue wave putting the House in Democratic control.
Are you ready for a great Democratic victory? I thought so.
But Republicans will retain control of the Senate with a Texas win by Ted Cruz over challenger Beto O'Rourke. Joe Donnelly, the Indiana Democrat, ousted by Republican Mike Braun.
And I want to thank all Hoosiers.
Marsha Blackburn keeping Tennessee's open Senate seat in Republican hands, topping Democrat Phil Bredesen. In West Virginia, Democrat Joe Manchin keeping his seat, fending off challenger Patrick Morrisey.
We've got to bring people together. Mr. President, I want you to be president of the United States, not the divided states.
President Trump, not on the ballot, but exit polls show he was a major factor for at least 2/3 of voters of both parties. Across the country, 36 governor seats up for grabs. In Florida, Democrat Andrew Gillum and Republican Ron DeSantis locked in a tight race. And in Georgia, Democrat Stacey Abrams working to defeat Republican Brian Kemp to become the nation's first African-American female governor. Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Washington.
And joining us here, our panel, Jim Veros, Lisa Bryant joining us. Thanks so much for being here, guys. We appreciate it. We heard from you in the 8 o'clock hour. As the numbers have continued to come in, we're starting to get a clearer picture on some of these statewide races, the fact that Gavin Newsom, a comfortable win for him, some of these local ones. Let's start with the governor's race, though. What jumps out right away when we see Gavin? Was this the inevitable that came to fruition?
Yeah. I
would agree.
I think
no surprises.
No surprise, and we talked about this during the primary. Was the biggest problem that could be for Gavin would be Antonio, and once Antonio did not get into the runoff, that was
Let's dive into that just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if Antonio Villaraigosa, the former Los Angeles mayor, would have gotten into this head-to-head, then not only would perhaps he have taken a bunch of Democrats with him, but then pretty much all the conservatives probably would have gone with him as well. So it would have been a much scarier race, I think, for Gavin Newsom. Many people had thought.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I think he would have had to work a lot harder. I think Newsom, at least from our perspective in the Valley, sort of took this race for granted. I don't think he ever projected that he really had to fight for this win.
Well, we were talking a little bit earlier about the fact that we saw Gavin Newsom in this area maybe 2 times, but John Cox was a regular visitor here.
All the time. And he was, somebody who's always trying to get these interviews with people. I would ask for one-on-ones with both camps. Never got one with Gavin Newsom, although anytime he did come through, he would speak with the media, kind of what we call a press gaggle.
Well, and there was never a debate.
There was a radio only.
Right. Just a radio only debate.
But never anything on television.
So folks really didn't have maybe the access to really see them side by side and really do that type of comparison.
And to speak on that, tactics-wise, the politics behind it, Gavin, once he got into the runoff against John Cox,
he didn't feel he needed.
Didn't have to. The
he
data,
felt he won in June, didn't he?
That's all he had to do was to beat Antonio in the primary. And he was on a couple-month vacation driving around in his bus. That's what that was. The polling data was so strong that he literally said, I don't need to call Evan on stop back. I don't need.
You know what?
Sorry, but I'm up 17 points.
Yeah,
why would I subject myself to that sort of a possible slip up? Yeah,
Do you think that John Cox thought maybe he would ride the momentum of the gas tax repeal, that maybe he was hoping for stronger support for that? We had talked earlier about initially he had support.
I think it's hard to ride a prop all the way to election. I mean, because ultimately somebody's going to still evaluate the candidate.
Yeah.
You know, and it's no surprise that Cox was for reducing taxes and tax burden on Californians. And so I think that, you know, there's a correlation between people who wanted to repeal it and would vote for him, but he would have to still win a lot of voters over.
I mean, what did we see from him? We saw it was like conservatives' greatest hits in California, though, right? It was the gas tax. It was the DMV. It was high-speed rail.
Right.
And each time he'd come to the Valley, he would have like a new pet project that he would talk about.
It kind of seemed like, in a way, he was distancing himself. I didn't notice him mentioning the gas tax really toward the end of the campaign.
And it's a problem for Republicans, not just in California, but nationwide, when you have to run in a primary. And John Cox had to run to the right to beat Travis Allen. So getting the endorsement of President Trump was huge for him to get the Republicans to show up so that he can get in the runoff.
And then it was huge for Gavin.
Right then, he had to go, yeah, by the way, the guy who got me here, I can't really talk about that stuff anymore. That's a big problem, not just for California Republicans, but Republicans nationwide, is having that pendulum swing so far back to the center.
How are we going to remember John Cox? How will he be remembered here in California?
Pull-ups.
Pull-ups? That man could pump them out.
That's right.
Check out some tweets.
Do you think we'll be seeing him again at some point? No.
I don't know. He might be one and done. I mean, for California, he's a perpetual runner.
Yeah, I don't see him sort of running for governor again. Obviously, this was an open seat because Jerry Brown was out. But, you know, there's always going to be a Republican businessman that thinks he can take down an established Democratic candidate.
All right. We'll tell you what. We're going to segue right now. We want to talk about some of the congressional races that we've been following.
Specifically District 16. Congressman Jim Costa, the incumbent, facing challenger Elizabeth Heng. And, well, it seems like it's tightening a bit. It seems like the spread was a little bit bigger.
It is tightening right now, only a 4 percentage points ahead. And I believe that we have Dennis Valera. He's with T.J. Cox, I believe. No, he's not. I'm sorry. He is with
Elizabeth Heng's party in downtown
Dennis.
Fresno.
Hey guys, sorry, it's just a little hard to hear you right now. There are a lot of voices talking in this room right now. Everyone's pretty excited. The gap between Heng and Costa, it's getting a little tighter as precincts continue to report in. Initially, there was about a 14-point gap. Now we're at about 4-point gap, so it really is tightening. Now Heng, as you guys have known, she's been branding her campaign as the new voice for the Central Valley in Washington. She's been going after Costa's voting record, claiming it's more for big-name Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, other than the interests of Central Valley issues like immigration, water, and other issues like that. Now, earlier when I talked to her about the initial results, she says that she was telling me that she was confident things would turn in her favor with so many precincts to report in still. And that's true. Right now, about 33%, according to our website, have been reported. So still a lot more votes to count, still a lot more results to tally. And she says she's planning to win tonight, but of course we don't know that for sure. Regardless, she says she's going to stay in the Valley, make sure that the change that she has been advocating for, that she's been pushing for in her campaign, gets accomplished. Send back things over to you.
Dennis Valera reporting for us with the Elizabeth Heng election party. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. We want to move through some other races that we're seeing here right now. There's a lot going on. In fact, if we wanted to start with some of the, all right, so we start with the propositions. Proposition 1, the housing assistance programs right now. Slight lead, 52% of Californians say yes.
Proposition 2, another bond measure for housing for folks with mental illness. We're at 59% on that one. It is passing at this point.
Proposition 3 is the water bond, which right now is a no. This one would be a big win for a lot of Central Valley, particularly the ag industry, but right now it's a 6-point gap, not in their favor.
Proposition 4, funding for children's health care. It is passing at this point, and we have 27% of the precincts in. If I'm reading that correctly?
You are.
Anyway, 58% say yes.
Proposition 5 is the one that would make it easier for older Californians to buy a new home and not have to pay much higher property taxes. But right now it's a no right now. So 57% with no, and the big one stuff. Here it is.
Proposition 6, to repeal the gas tax. Voters are saying no. They want it. They want that gas tax.
Or they want whatever was written down in the on the ballot.
They
right?
want their the transportation improvement.
And people want all the time daylight saving time. They don't want to have to turn the clocks back again like they just said. Of course, just because we're voting yes right now doesn't mean that's going to happen. It takes an act of Congress to finalize that, but this is laying down some groundwork to make that happen.
Proposition 8 regulates the amount dialysis clinics can charge their patients, and this is being voted down at this point.
That's not going to happen. Proposition 9 was thrown out. That was the one that would have chopped California into 3 parts. That was ruled unconstitutional. So Prop 10, the rent control, that one's also going down right now. That would have allowed local jurisdictions to enforce new rent control policies, but that's a no.
Okay, Proposition 11 requires private sector emergency ambulance workers to remain on call even during their work breaks, and voters think this is a good idea. It is passing.
Proposition 12 deals with farm animal confinement, giving some very specific dimensions on what you can keep chickens and pigs in and stuff like that. Right now, it's looking like that's going to pass. 59% of the vote say yes. And if we want to keep looking at some of the other results that we're seeing right now, for example, if we take a look at
City Council, how about that?
I'm not sure where we were headed, actually.
Oh, okay.
But all right, so since we got the panel here, the gas tax, the fact that it looks like that's going to be sticking around. A lot of people, if you asked them on the street, you would have thought that, do you like the gas tax? No. Well, but here we are, 55%.
Well, also, its passage, wouldn't it have regulated how these types of taxes would be decided in the future? Voters would have the say. Am I correct on that? Or
yes.
If
you are.
Okay.
Yeah. You are correct. Yeah.
Right. Well,
so I mean, so technically, if with this not passing, the legislature, the state legislature, could potentially do this again.
And they will, because I think when it comes to taxes on fuel, we've talked about this on other programs, is obviously when you go to the pump, you know what the federal tax is on your on your gallon of gas, but you really don't know how much of your gallon of gas is taxes, how much of it is actually petroleum costs.
It's just
so I think if you actually had an itemized list on the pump on how much of this was going where.
Oh my gosh, I see a new proposition.
Right. But once again,
just like when you buy food, you see the ingredient list.
Sure. Well, there you go. Caloric intake or how much your taxes are. But once again, I think it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Once you get used to paying $3.30 or $3.60 for a gallon of gas and not $3.20, how much is that really affecting how much out of your pocket is?
But the way this was passed incensed some people because voters didn't have a say on it, and if this proposition had passed, voters would have a say on it in the future. So I don't know. It was kind of an interesting little sidebar.
We got to leave it at there right now because we're going to be cutting on to KSEE24 on the television to do a quick little update for our viewers there who are watching our national coverage. You'll see it right here as well on Facebook Live and YourCentralValley.com. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. The screen's going to go kind of blank for a second. We'll be right back. Hey there, thanks for joining us here on this election night. I'm Evan Onstott.
And I'm Stephanie Barugian.
First up, we want to take a look at Congressional District 16. Congressman Jim Costa facing Republican Elizabeth Heng. When we go to the numbers, we see that Jim Costa has a lead, but it has narrowed here recently. It was up in almost double digits. Now it's down to about 4%.
All right, let's check in with our Alex Balakian. He is live where Costa supporters have gathered. Alex, what's happening there now?
Well, I'll tell you what, Sam's Deli, it's getting even more packed with supporters, constituents, and volunteers for Jim Costa. He walked into Sam's Deli at 9:45 after being with supporters and volunteers in Merced, and he declared victory over Elizabeth Heng. He said this was not as close as some of his other obviously running mates beforehand in other District 16 and beforehand running for Congress. He believes he has won this race, but he has not heard from Elizabeth Heng. Elizabeth Heng, obviously, she is not going to concede this early. We looked at some of the latest numbers at this point, and I'll give you a live look. They see some of the numbers there live on KSEE24 now. And Jim Costa had 53% to 47% as you guys are all watching it. Of course, the outburst in the room. But again, as you guys can tell, still very much close in this race. But again, Jim Costa saying, walking in at 9:45 tonight, declaring victory. So yeah, another jovial crowd, if you will. Of course, that has to do a lot with the Sam's Deli food as well. Very good. And of course, Jim Costa believing he's headed back to Washington for the 16th district here. We'll send it back to you guys.
Alexon, thank you so much.
He did gain a percentage point.
He did. I saw that. Other House races that we're following right now, we got a District 4 that we want to bring up. There we go. Tom McClintock, 10-point lead right now, the incumbent over Democrat Jessica Morse.
All right, let's move on to District 22. Incumbent David Valadao with a strong lead over challenger TJ Cox.
And when we look at 22, Devin Nunes, 57%. LA Times just called that race for Nunes, by the way. Andrew Jan's the Democrat, he's quite a bit behind. Let's talk about the Democrat Dianne Feinstein.
Yeah, she's won her bid for a 5th term representing California in the U.S. Senate, extending a career in politics that began a long time ago, back in 1969.
The 85-year-old led fellow Democrat Kevin De Leon from the beginning, but the race was close at times. Here's a look at the numbers right now. It's, let's see, about 8 points between the two of them.
Our Alex Delgado joining us now from the newsroom with more on this race. Alex.
Well, Senator Dianne Feinstein won re-election, but she will be returning to a Senate that remains in Republican control. Feinstein spoke to a crowded room of supporters earlier, thanking her family and applauding the fact that there are now 4 women on the Democratic side of the Senate Judiciary Committee. She said tonight that there are still very big problems that need to be addressed. Take a listen. All right, we don't have that sound, so I will say this, that Republicans remain frustrated because they did not really have a choice voting, some of them not even voting for anyone. All right, in the newsroom, Alex Delgado, back to you guys.
Well, that's what happens when you get 2 Democrats on a ballot.
Yeah.
Republicans aren't going to be happy about it.
They're missing out. All right, that does it for us for now. We'll be back with our news at 11 o'clock, but we go back online.
That's right, Tony's there.
We're going to head back out to Hanford, where Congressman Devin Nunes, he's been declared the winner by the LA Times in his congressional seat. He's speaking now. Let's listen in.
All of the Senate seats, if you look at it, it's probably going to end up 4 or 5 Senate seats that we picked up. We haven't had this many Senate seats in a long, long time. So like I said, although we may not have the votes in the House, it's going to be very, very close, and it's going to be interesting to see what exactly it is they're going to do, because they have not laid out any plans as to what they're going to do for this country. So they're going to resist, they're going to continue to obstruct, probably continue to protest, but at the end of the day, that doesn't do anything for America, and it sure doesn't do anything for the Valley. So we still have a long way to go in terms of the other races here, but I wanted to make sure that we give you an update. And I want to thank you again for all of your support, and thank you for being here, and I'm sure that we'll have another speaker up here soon. But thank you all very much, and have a good evening.
It's Congressman Devin Nunes. comfortably ahead on this evening as we take a look at the numbers. 57% to Andrew Jan's 43%. Andrew Jan's raised a lot of money. A lot more money than Devin Nunes has ever had to contend with. Of course, Nunes had quite a bit of money himself.
I don't think that was a problem for him.
But Devin Nunes, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I don't think he'd ever been closer. Nobody had ever been within 22 points of him on election night. This is a lot closer than 22 points. It's not single digits, but it's a lot closer than what anybody has shown. I was going to say, it just shows the power that Republicans do have inside this district.
Well, that's true. That's true, because Jans was a challenger that really worked hard. He did. I mean, you have to say, whether you supported him or not, he did work hard to try to get that win tonight. It doesn't look like it worked for him.
And I'm hoping that we do get a chance to hear from Andrew Jans later tonight. We do have a crew there at his party, and we also have a crew there as well in Hanford with Congressman Nunes. In fact, let's go to Justin Lum. He's down there live. Justin.
Hey, Evan, Steph. Well, Congressman Nunes, he came out of nowhere, walked up on stage, and everyone was surprised and happy to see him as they started celebrating, and he talked about a wide array of issues. But we also saw him meet up with Congressman Valadao. They have a good relationship, of course, and Valadao with a comfortable lead right now, 57% of the votes. He's been making his rounds, shaking hands. Good vibes here right now in the room, as you can see, still a good crowd, but that crowd up there shuffled up in front of the projector screen waiting for results that are still developing. As I just said, Valadao with 57% of the votes so far. Still some numbers to report, but still dozens of people here to support Valadao and Nunes. Now, as for the congressman in the 21st district, his fourth election about to wrap up. He's been calm throughout the night and good spirits. He's also been watching what's going on around the country as well. I asked him what's his game plan if reelected. Water has and will remain a huge priority for his district. Just a couple of weeks after President Trump signed the water memorandum, a bill Valadao was a big part of crafting. It would bring deadlines of a reliable water supply to the valley. Valadao has big support from the farming industry, as we saw here tonight when it comes to this campaign. A lot of contributors. We did talk briefly about the dynamics of the Democrats taking back the House and the Republicans retaining control of the Senate. He says he is willing to work with whoever he has to work with to get things done for his district here in the 21st. Now remember, he has won each of the last 3 elections with more than 55% of the vote in a district that does lean Democratic, and it does look promising for him tonight. As we just mentioned, just 30 minutes ago, Nunes arriving to a very happy crowd of Republicans here. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Justin Lum. Thank you very much, Justin, reporting from Hanford tonight.
Yeah, things looking good for Valadao, things looking good for Nunes. And if we look at Jeff Denham, which we don't have the numbers to put up on the screen, but this is up in Modesto. The Democrat, the challenger, Josh Harder, he's expected to possibly challenge in this, and many people think that he's supposed to beat Jeff Denham, but Denham right now up about 1 percentage point with half of the with half of the precincts in.
So that we may not get a final on that one tonight.
That one may take a while.
All right, locally we've got of course some city council seats up for grab, but also voters in Fresno have been deciding on Measure P, which would raise our sales tax here in the city by a percentage, and it would fund parks and improve parks, maybe add some new parks, and it is not passing at this time. Some may be surprised by that. Yeah,
because here's the thing. It needs 2/3 of the vote. It needs to hit 66.6. And it's not even above 50% right now. AJ Cotto joining us here in studio, telling us the very latest from this.
Well, that's right. Proponents are looking for that 66, more than 66% of the votes. It's not looking good for them right now. That's what they need to get this measure passed. Now, we did go to the Measure P election night party. As the polls were closing, supporters say the legislation will make city parks cleaner and safer. It also come at a slight cost, a 0.3% sales tax for the next 30 years, about $40 annually per household, collecting more than $37 million a year. If passed, supporters say the funds will also go towards ensuring access for people with disabilities, as well as creating programs for at-risk youth. Those in opposition say they want a tax proposal that addresses the public safety needs of the entire community.
Simply putting all your money, $2 billion over 30 years in only parks does not make sense at the expense of everything else in the general fund. And my primary responsibility is keeping our city safe.
And Measure P will fund city parks, recreation, streets, and the arts. If passed, a committee will be formed to make sure revenue can only be spent locally. In the newsroom, AJ Cotto, KSEE24, local news that matters.
AJ, thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Well, if this doesn't pass, we're going to most likely see another measure down the road back on a ballot that we'll be deciding on that may include some money for parks, some money for public safety, because that seemed to be something that people were concerned about.
Absolutely. In fact, I was talking to somebody from the mayor's office today. The mayor obviously very against Measure P because worried about if they could then come back and get another measure passed for public safety.
Yeah.
The person in the mayor's office told me that expect very soon for the mayor to reach out, maybe as soon as tomorrow, and issue a statement saying, I'm already working towards exactly what you're talking about.
Well, he was trying to get something like that on the ballot, but didn't have support from the city council.
No.
There was going to be these two competing measures. So now this may open the door for him to finally to get that.
Yeah. Let's talk about some other local races that we're following right now. For example, State Senate, Andreas Borges, the Fresno County Supervisor, moving into a State Senate role, and it's looking pretty comfortable for him with 62% of the vote.
All right, we're going to move on to District 12 on the State Senate. Rob Poitras now with 51%. This is a pretty close race. We do have half the votes in, but still Ana Caballero very close, only 2 percentage points behind.
We'll watch that one closely. Jim Patterson, comfortable lead right now, the Fresno Democrat, the former mayor of Fresno, the thorn in the paw of Governor Brown for the last few years.
And he's been on the case of the DMV of late.
And now he's going to be the thorn in the paw of Gavin Newsom.
Yes, that won't change.
Yeah, so we'll see what goes on with that.
Juana Rambula, the incumbent, of course, local man, doctor, and he is definitely handily beating his challenger.
Yeah, Devin Mathis, another incumbent, the Republican, down in Visalia, ahead of Jose Zagala right now, very close. Devin Mathis, his last term, he had to deal with a lot of stuff, a lot of controversy, but he's pushed through. He faced some challenges from the right within his own party. When it looked like he was going to win, they all surrounded him, and they now support him.
All right, and State Assembly District 21, Adam Gray with a very strong lead over his challenger, Justin Quigley.
So let's talk again about those state propositions.
Yeah.
People like doing homework on the state. Well, I don't know if you like doing homework, but if you're like me, you ended up doing homework.
If you want to make an informed decision, you have to do a little bit of homework and try to sort through the wording that sometimes can make them a little bit confusing.
You got to cut through it. KSEE24's Pedro Quintana joining us in studio right now with a breakdown of some of these races.
Yeah, LA's propositions are being already called. Proposition 10 are also Associated Press is calling it defeated as well today. The no vote. People are not happy with this rent control proposition. So only a few percent are reporting these propositions range from affordable housing, repeal of a gas tax, and a water bond measure. We are assuming these measures are already being called. Last look, let's take a look at Proposition 6. It would repeal the gas tax that was put in place last year. But take a look at your screen. The gas tax repeal is falling behind. The no's have 55%, and the yeses were at 45%. A yes vote would repeal the gas tax. A no vote would keep the tax in place. The numbers have been changing throughout the night. We'll, of course, be following this race very closely. Let's switch to Proposition 3, a water bond measure. That proposition is also failing tonight, with the no's leading with 53%, and the yeses are at 46%. It would provide hundreds of millions of dollars to restore safe drinking water and restore watershed. But again, voters saying no to this water bond measure. Another proposition that's gotten a lot of attention was Prop 10. Californians saying no to rent control. It's failing by 65%. Voters say it would help drive down rent prices, while opponents say the measure is bad for renters and homeowners as well. The Associated Press projecting this proposition will be voted down. And if you would like to check out more election results in regards to these state propositions, just head to our website, yourcentralvalley.com. In the studio, Pedro Quintana, KSEE24, local news that matters.
A lot of people, pumped up about some of these things. Pedro.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, the gas tax, that has been something. When you were asking about this, covering this story, the gas tax had to have been the number one thing that people wanted to talk about. I can only imagine.
People were for roads. People were against this gas tax. So it was a split. People were very upset by this.
When you talk to people who were for the yes, the people that want to see the gas tax repealed, Was there any talk about them being upset about the ballot language, the way that it was written up on the ballot, saying that it was misleading to voters?
The title was misleading to the voters. I think they felt that way. The title was misleading. They felt that the wording wasn't really correct as well. So many people from the yes side went out there and got that support, saying, "Hey, we got to repeal this gas tax." Others saying, "Hey, we need this money for the roads because obviously it'll affect state and local governments as well."
Let's check in with Steph right now with the panel. Pedro, thanks so much.
Yep.
I was reading something on the NBC website earlier this evening about what the top issue was nationwide for voters. What were they most concerned about? And on a national level, health care was considered one of the top issues. It's what drove voters to the polls, and maybe it's what led them to make some of their decisions for Congress and for the Senate. What do you think the top issue is for, I don't know, if you were to take a stab at what the top issue is for voters in our local area and even on the statewide level, and what may have led them to make their decisions for some of these important national seats?
Well, I think it really comes down to, it's not just one simple answer. I think obviously the easy answer usually is water. Obviously, we're still an ag-based.
For our area.
For our area, ag is still the number one cash crop. No pun intended. So water is always going to be the largest issue. Statewide, I think immigration is huge in this state. As long as President Trump is in office and continues to have the style of rhetoric, I think California is going to be his number one nemesis. And I think the president likes it that way. Going into re-election, he always needs an enemy to be able to get on his pulpit and sort of preach at. And California is going to continue, especially with Gavin Newsom being our governor. He's got a new friend in crime, so to speak, in regards to staying top of news right now.
Do you think those that challenged the incumbents for Congress here in California maybe didn't tap into what some of those hot issues were, that they didn't do the best job of convincing voters that in this area, that water was enough of a priority for them, or immigration?
I think
they all had views on these topics.
Right. I don't know that it was the main issue that they ran on. I think that there was more of trying to have it be sort of a referendum on Trump and aligning our Valley representatives with Trump and attacking that seemed to be the primary strategy that I saw.
I'll give Andrew Jansen a lot of credit. I think he did everything that he could in his power to change the conversation. Obviously, if I'm a Democratic strategist, I'm trying to get him to talk to more Republicans. Obviously, you have more Republicans registered in this district. I don't think Jance got on the train of I need to get 10% of the Republicans to flip. Getting some Republicans from out of state to come in and endorse him. But besides that, I think the Democrats that ran against incumbent Republicans in Congress, Valdeo and Nunes, I think they did everything they could.
Right.
I really do. I don't think they missed the boat on anything.
Was there enough of an effort to bring in new voters and get more people to register? Would there have been? I don't know how many thousands would need to register to really turn the tide, but should there have been more work in that area?
If the Democrats couldn't get new voters on this cycle, they're not going to get them.
Yeah.
I think there was such an effort to get out the vote.
Right, there was. I think there were really big get out the vote efforts. We saw people recruiting on campus all the time.
Right.
The high schools, high schools had so many young people registered. Now, the problem with that is a lot of them are pre-registration, so they can't vote yet. They'll be able to vote in 2020, but not yet. But huge numbers of young voters registered. We'll see what the numbers look like when they turn out. Nationwide, there was a surge in young voter turnout.
Right.
And that's good.
Yeah.
And I think that's good, but I also think that one thing that pollsters and operatives always think is, well, new voters and young voters are going to vote most likely Democratic. Is that going to continue, or are we taking that sort of block for granted? We'll see, in the next couple of elections.
Right. Well,
just because you're young doesn't mean that you're going to be voting a certain way.
Right. But we heard from that young man in Hanford that Megan Roop was speaking to, who started out as a Democrat, grew up in a family of Democrats, and then at 18, heard some other views and changed his mind. So that does happen, certainly.
Absolutely.
Sure. I think it's time to turn it back to Evan.
Sure, Steph.
Right?
Do it. No, I'm ready. I'm ready because Here's the thing. We've been looking at a lot of the local races, but again, let's go over some of the big state ones. We've seen the governor races, right? Gavin Newsom is going to be our next governor, and I said this earlier tonight, but this is crazy. I had to check this twice. This is the first time California has elected back-to-back Democrats since the year 1886. I had to check that 3 times to make sure it's right, but it is. This is the first time they've gone back-to-back with Democrats. Jerry Brown, then Gavin Newsom. Let's take a look at some of the other numbers right now. Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, a former ambassador to Hungary, I believe, over Ed Hernandez. Jim Veros pumping his fist. Greek power, he says. Both of them came here, Eleni Kounalakis and Ed Hernandez. They came here to interview with me. Both were well-spoken and very passionate. But it looks like right now, Eleni Kounalakis will be the next lieutenant governor. Attorney General Javier Becerra looks like he's going to keep the role that he was appointed to, 57%, the Democrat over the Republican Stephen Bailey. Let's take a look now at what's the next one we want to talk about. U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein. She had such a big lead in the primary. Kevin De Leon, a former state Senate leader, still in the state Senate, he has whittled that down, but still it's 8 points that separates the two.
So he retains his seat in the state in the state Senate.
Boy, you know what? Oops. Actually, you really put me on the spot because I'm not sure if De Leon is coming back on the state Senate or not. I'm not sure. I'm getting a lot of I don't knows in the room. So thank you, Steph.
Well.
So
I'm just curious.
Yeah. Now I am too. Alex Padilla, the Secretary of State, he's going to hold on to his job, the Democrat, over Mark Moiser, a guy who actually did a massive bicycle tour, the Republican. He only ended up getting 42% of the vote, but he actually did a huge bicycle. When most people were taking bus tours across the state, Steph, he was riding a bicycle.
Wow.
In the middle of the summer.
Apparently
he did Death Valley in the middle of the summer.
That's really something.
Treasurer Fiona Ma is going to hold on to that. Greg Conlon was just in the Central Valley here recently when John Cox came through. He was in Madera, met them there, but he only has 42% of the vote right now.
All right, I think we're going to move on to some local races. Fresno City Council District